afternoon, fair ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very royal September wrap-up. The reason for my very fancy and royal attire here today is because this month I read the Selection series by Cass. So my goal for the month was to read the entire Selection series, which originally I thought was 4 books, but it turns out to be actually more like 6 books. However, the last 2 are sort of a slightly different story than the first 4, which I will explain when I get into more about what this book is about. But pretty much everything I read this month was the entire Selection series, the first 4 books in the series, and I had a total blast doing it. So for those of you who don't know, the Selection series is a story set in sort of a dystopian world. It's supposed to be the United States, but in a dystopian world after some wars have happened. The kingdom is now called Elia. There is a caste system in place, so everybody is placed in a caste between 1 and 8, I believe, and the castes determine your occupation and kind of course, your caste, like your level of social value in society. And the kingdom of Elia is also a monarchy. So there is a king and a queen and a prince. And when the prince comes of age to get married, it is tradition for them to have this celebration called the Selection. Basically what the Selection is all eligible women between a certain age group from every, what do they call them? Do they call them provinces or states? I think it's a province. From every province of Elia, which there are 35 of them, 1 girl will be chosen. So anybody who's eligible of the appropriate age can apply, and they are supposed to be chosen at random, 1 from each province. And then those 35 girls move into the palace and they date the prince, basically, and he narrows them down and eventually chooses a bride. It's very bachelor-y. But I have to say, I was so pleasantly surprised with this story. So this story follows our protagonist, whose name is America. She is a 5 in the caste system, which means that her family is sort of, you know, the scale is from 1 to 8. So she's sort of on the lower end of the caste. 5s generally work in art of some kind, so like painting, or I believe writing is encompassed in that as well, or music, and she is a musician and a singer, so that's what she does. And America doesn't really want to enter the Selection because she doesn't really think it's a good idea. She just thinks it's kind of weird to date this guy that you don't really know, and she doesn't really have the highest of opinions about the palace and the monarchy and the way they're running the country. So she doesn't really have any interest in the prince, but her boyfriend at the time, secret boyfriend, secret because he is a 6, which is a caste below her, and they're not really sure how their family will react to that. That's most of the reason why their relationship is secret, but it's complicated. Her boyfriend at the time sort of breaks up with her and tells her that she should enter the Selection because if she doesn't, then he'll always worry that like she could have had such a better life without him, because he doesn't want her to marry him and become a 6, which is a caste lower than what she is now, when she could potentially have the opportunity to become a 1 and be the next queen of the country. So basically, in order to get her boyfriend and her parents off her back, she decides she might as well enter an application into the Selection, because with all the girls entering, she can't possibly be the one chosen from their province. I mean, what are the chances? So of course America is the girl who's chosen from her province, and she ends up entering the Selection and moving into the palace to meet the prince and to date him, and drama ensues. But seriously though, this story is so much more than meets the eye, and I was so pleasantly surprised. Everybody who I've heard recommend this book, they basically talk about it like, oh, like it's a fun contemporary story, like it's nothing revolutionary, but it's fun and it's kind of like The Bachelor, so it's exciting and drama and, you know, whatever, it's good, I guess. And I feel like people are totally selling this book short because it is so much more than that. This book deals with so many deep, important topics, from the issues with how the country is being run to poverty and the caste system and how the royal family is kind of out of touch with the rest of the country because they have always lived in privilege and they don't really understand what it's like to be someone in a lower caste. There's a whole sort of subplot with these rebels who are against the royal family and want to sort of overthrow the government because they don't like the way they're running things with the caste system and they think it's unfair and they just want them to suffer for that, basically. So there are rebels storming the castle and attacking everybody. There's a character who deals with PTSD and trauma from these attacks and from rape. There's a character who deals with parental abuse. There's just so much more to this story than some superficial competition where a guy is choosing between 35 girls to be his bride. And there is so much more to the prince himself than America assumes when she arrives at the palace. And it's really just an interesting story of almost a little bit of a Pride and Prejudice vibe, kind of, because she definitely has pride in where she comes from in being a 5, and she also has a little bit of prejudice toward Prince Maxen as a 1 and thinks that he, you know, must be following in his father's footsteps and he must, you know, be out of touch and not really want to see the problems in the country, and he's very different than she assumes. So yeah, that is pretty much what this story is about, and it was so interesting. And usually, I mean, I've only done like one wrap-up / TBR video so far, but I don't really plan to do like a whole review on the books every time. But since this time, this is pretty much the only thing I read. Like, I read all 4 of these books, which I'll show you in a second, but it was pretty much just this one story. So there's not a whole lot to talk about besides this, and I just loved it. I think it was kind of, for me, a mix between The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci and The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. It kind of had some elements of both of those stories, and like I said, a little bit of Pride and Prejudice as well, and it's just a really well-written story with so many interesting subplots that I was not expecting from the way that it was recommended to me, being so like, oh yeah, it's a fun story. Like, it is so much more than a fun story. It's like got some really important deep themes, kind of similar to The Hunger Games, with Katniss sort of being this person who she's sort of a reluctant chosen one, in that she is chosen to be the Mockingjay and to lead this sort of rebellion against the Capitol. And in a similar way, America is definitely chosen by the people. Not literally, but, you know, they approve of her because she is strong and she understands the problems with the caste system and with the government as a whole, and she's not gonna roll over and just let Maxen like bully her into things. She's a tough woman and an intelligent woman who's going to make some real changes if she were to become the Queen of Aaliyah. It's also really interesting that America, you know, there are definitely a lot of moments where she's struggling with her feelings about Prince Maxen and how their relationship is going, but there's a whole other aspect of this that's very different than the stakes of The Bachelor, the TV show, because she's also struggling with the fact that not only if she's chosen in the end, not only is she going to be this man's wife, but she's also now going to be the princess of this country, and she doesn't really know if she wants to be the princess, and she kind of struggles throughout the book with whether or not she thinks she even can be, or if she would even be good at it. And even if she would be good at it, would she even enjoy that or want that for her life? And it's really cool to see her come around to the idea and realize her true potential, because it's so clear as a reader, and for the like citizens of Aaliyah, it's clear that America is totally the queen that their country needs. And it's just a really interesting story of her coming around to seeing her own potential and value. And yeah, it's just a really, really good book, and everybody should read it. So this is the first book in the series called The Selection. This is kind of the beginning of America joining the selection and meeting Prince Maxen, and you know, her not being over her ex-boyfriend and drama with all the other girls and all that jazz is kind of the introduction to the story. And then after that we have The Elite, which is the name that they use for the last, I think it's six girls. So once the competition is down to 6, those 6 girls are referred to as the elite. So this is kind of that stage of the selection process. There are 6 girls left. And then there is The One, which is the sort of the last book of this portion of the series, which is about Maxen finally making his choice in who is going to be his queen. And yeah, I don't want to spoil anything because it's such a great series. You should read it. And then there is a 4th book called Happily Ever After. It says the companion to the Selection series. And this book is basically a collection of like novellas and short stories that kind of dig into some of the other characters in the story of the Selection. So there's a short novella about the queen and sort of some background on her experience in the Selection, because this is a tradition that's been around for a long time. So the queen, who is currently queen, is queen because she was chosen through the process of the Selection when the king was of age. If that makes sense. I feel like I said that in a weird way, but you get it. So that was a really interesting story kind of about her background, because she had a very, very different selection experience than America did, because she actually was like obsessed with the prince and really wanted to be queen and to be with him, and kind of a little starstruck by him, and that was not America's experience at all. And then there is The Prince, which is a short novella sort of telling the beginning part of the Selection book from Prince Maxen's perspective. And I did not freaking want that to end. I was so sad when I flipped the page and realized that was the end of it. I could have read that entire series all over again from Maxen's perspective. So the only complaint I bet I have about that is that it was too short. And then there's The Guard, which is a story about Aspen, who is America's ex-boyfriend from home. He actually, spoiler alert, I guess this is kind of a significant spoiler, so if you don't want to see the spoiler, skip ahead to this timestamp. So, spoiler alert, at some point during the selection process, Aspen gets drafted into the military, or whatever they call it, and he ends up being stationed as a guard at the palace, which of course adds a whole lot more drama, because now America is there kind of falling in love with this prince that she never expected to fall in love with, and her sort of ex-ish boyfriend is now there too. So yeah, there's a whole lot of drama there that ensues. And then there's a story called The Favorite, which I hesitate to say anything about because it is a huge spoiler, but basically there is... I'm just gonna keep this in the spoiler zone, okay? So if you don't care about spoilers and you're not really sure if you're interested in this story, I will say that a really interesting subplot for me was that one of the girls ends up, my crown is just slipping off my head every 2 seconds. Jeez Louise, tough life being a princess. So one of the girls in the selection ends up falling for one of the guards, which is a big no-no. Not only is it like frowned upon, but it's like considered treason and you can be killed for that. So that's a very dramatic subplot, and this story, The Favorite, is about that girl and her experience falling for the guy that she falls for. And I really, really loved that part of the story a lot. I wish I could, again, like all of these, I could read a whole book about all of these. They're so interesting. Okay, done with spoilers, for now at least. And then there is scenes from Celeste. Celeste is one of the characters in the selection. She's kind of like the bitchy girl that everyone doesn't like because she's so full of herself, and she's a 2 in the caste system, and she's a model, and she just is annoying. But there is more to her than meets the eye, of course, as there is with everybody, and that kind of comes out a little bit later. So there are 3 little short stories or chapters kind of written from her perspective, which is really interesting to get more into her head and see even more that there is more to her than meets the eye. And then there's a story called The Maid, which is about Lucy, one of America's maids, and she has kind of a love story of her own, which I will leave at that, and it's very, very cute, and I love it. And then there is After the One, which is sort of an epilogue of sorts to the book The One, and it kind of tells, you know, after that, after the queen is chosen and Prince Maxon and his new lady are together, and kind of what happens in their life after that. And then there are some short chapters called Where Are They Now, which go through a couple of the other kind of side girl characters in the selection and what happened with them after they were not chosen by Prince Maxon, and you know, what they decided to do with their life after the selection. So that's interesting. And then the last one is just a sneak peek at the next book in the series. So those are the first 4 books of the selection series. There are 2 more, but they are slightly different because this whole part of the series was told from America's perspective and her story with Prince Maxon. And then the next 2 books, The Heir and the Crown, are told from Prince Maxon's daughter's perspective. So there's a whole nother selection happening, but it's men entering to win the hand of the princess instead of the other way around. It's like the selection but gender swapped kind of. So I'm excited to read those 2, but I didn't have time to do that yet this month. But yeah, that is all I've read so far in book form. It is only the 22nd of September right now, so I do still have a whole nother week of September. I'm not sure if I'm gonna pick up anything else because I have a lot going on this week and I want to do a lot of writing and editing my October videos, so I don't know if I'm gonna read anymore, but if I do, it will probably be this book. Paradescent for me is one of those like instant buy kind of authors. Like if I see something she has that's new and that I haven't read yet, I'm probably going to buy it. And I was at Barnes & Noble recently buying a different book, and this one happened to be on their 50% off table, and I also had a 10% off coupon, I think, or 15 or something, so it ended up being like $5 to buy this book. So I'm super excited about that. Great price, and it looks like a good story. So if I do get around to picking up another book this month, this will probably be it. And in addition to all of the selection books I read this month, I also read the first 4 books of the Dexter series. Actually, no, scratch that. It's the first 3 books, but I will definitely read the fourth one also by the end of the month. I just haven't finished it yet. I actually listened to all of the Dexter books on audio because I've listened to one or two of them in the past that my library had, and I think it is a super awesome series to listen to the audio version. It's a really good audiobook. It's narrated by the author, which is always fun, and I feel like that's its prime form, and I don't usually feel that way about audiobooks. I pretty much always prefer to actually read something, but I really like the audio version of Dexter. So I've listened to Darkly Dreaming Dexter, Dearly Devoted Dexter, and Dexter in the Dark, and then I just started Dexter by Design. I listen to them while I work, so I can pretty much get through an audiobook in like 2 or 3 days-ish, because I have a lot of time. I really like the Dexter series. I think they're written in a very interesting and unique way. Jeff Lindsay's a great author, and it's almost a little bit like literary fiction in some ways, I would say. It's really like interesting and poetic-ish writing. However, I will say that I definitely like the show better, and if I hadn't watched the show already, I don't know if I would necessarily continue reading the books. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, you can't tell how you would feel about something if you didn't have this other knowledge, because I don't know, I do have that other knowledge. I have seen the show, so I really like the books, but I'm not sure if I would like them or not if I didn't watch the show. There are just some things about the show that I think make Dexter a little bit more of a likable character and a tiny bit less monstrous. He's a little bit more human, I think, the way he's portrayed in the show than he is in the books, which is honestly probably less accurate to how a psychopath would actually be, but it's kind of more enjoyable to watch. And it's actually really interesting to me how different the books are from the show. The first book was pretty dang similar to the first season of the show, but after that, it's like they're not the same at all. Like the stories the books go through are completely new to me, and I've seen the whole show. Like they don't ever explore those specific storylines in the show. So it's kind of cool. If you really like the Dexter show, you'll probably enjoy reading the books because it's not like just watching the show in book form. It's like a whole new story. So it's almost like watching deleted scenes or having new episodes of the show. So that's kind of neat. There were also some things in the show that I didn't really like, so I was kind of hoping the books might do them differently. One of which is that I was really upset when they killed off Rita's character, and so far, I mean, I'm 4 books in, and I've actually listened to the audio version of the 5th or 6th book as well, and I know that Rita's not dead. She's still there, and she and Dexter are still together. So that's nice, because I really liked them being together, and I was really sad when she died. So yeah, that is what I've read this month, and I plan to listen to the 4th Dexter book by the end of this month. I can't listen to any more because the whole audiobook subscription thing is being weird, and I might talk about that in a video, or I might not. I don't really know. It depends on how it goes next month. But for now, I'm kind of cut off and can't listen to any more Dexter books at this point. So after that one, I might pick up, there's a book called Money, Possessions, and Eternity, I think. I don't remember who wrote it. I actually have the paperback version of that book, but it's in the other room and I'm too lazy to go get it. But I found it on my audiobook subscription thing, and I kind of like listening to nonfiction books on audio because I have a hard time wanting to actually sit down and read a nonfiction book, but sometimes they have some really good things to say. So I figured maybe listening to it would be more like listening to a podcast or something. So I'll probably read that next in audio form because as I said, I listen to these at work, and I work like, I don't know, roughly 6-ish hours, 4 days a week. So that's a lot of time to listen to some audio. So for the remainder of this month, I will definitely get through the next Dexter book, Dexter by Design, and I will probably pick up another book as well after that in audio. And if I decide to pick up another paperback book, it will probably be Once and For All by Sarah Dessen. And I think that will be it for this month. So to address the October TBR, I don't really have a TBR for October because it's going to be a super busy month for me. I'm going on a trip to Disneyland in like mid to late October with my mom and my sister for my mom's 50th birthday. So that's going to be really fun, but it will also mean that some other days of the week I'll have to work more longer hours to make up for the time that I'm gonna be gone. So it's just gonna be really busy, and I don't know how much I'm gonna feel like reading. So I've decided not to make a specific TBR. I'm just going to see how I feel in the moment, and if I want to read a book, I'll just decide at that time what I'm gonna read. However, I did find at my library the like 3 really thick big volumes of the graphic novel versions of The Walking Dead, which I think are gonna be super fun. I don't really read graphic novels. I think I've read one like once or twice maybe, but it's not really my thing, so I think it might be kind of fun to read something different that I'm not really used to. So I think I'm gonna pick that up today actually when I bring my selection books back to the library. I get most of my books from the library, by the way, so if they're ever like look really beat up or you can see the stickers on them or whatever, that is why. I don't really like to spend money on a bunch of books when I don't really care about collecting them. If I'm only gonna read them once, it just seems like a waste of money. I can always go back to the library and get it again if I want to read it again. So that's just how I do things here. So anyway, that is my September wrap up and sort of my explanation for why I don't have an October TBR, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, particularly on writing related topics, subscribe below. My first novel, Keep No Record, is available on Amazon if you'd like to check that out, and I will link that in the description box below. And that's it. I'll see y'all next time, and have a great day. Bye!